is Jamie, and I will be presenting my multimodal research project for Humanities Core. I titled my research presentation Behind the Amiable Facade in Henry Selick's Coraline. After reflecting on all the larger themes presented in Humanities Core, drawing connections from all the lectures centered on animals, people, and power, I was reminded of Coraline, one of my favorite animated films from childhood. Coraline incorporates elements such as surrealism, anthropomorphism, the blurring of boundaries between human animal and animate and inanimate. My presentation consists of 3 major parts. First, a brief intro to my primary source and also a brief background on the Gothic genre. Second, I will talk about an evolving scholarly conversation concerning Freud's concept of the uncanny and the different approaches scholars have used to examine this concept and establish connections. Last but not least, my main focus, which will be on non-human representations in the stop-motion animation, how I was able to produce humanistic interpretations based on specific visual scenes I have chosen. Henry Selick's Coraline is based on Neil Gaiman's original novella of the same name. The film maintains a creepy uneasiness that younger viewers crave and conveys a simple morale, as shown in the movie poster right here, "Be careful what you wish for." For those of you who are unfamiliar with the movie, Coraline tells the story of a 9-year-old, blue-haired explorer named Coraline Jones who had just moved into an old house. After failing to draw her parents' attention one misty afternoon, Coraline begins to explore the corridors of her new home, eventually discovering a small locked door that, to her surprise, only reveals the bare bricks that serve as the dividing wall of the neighboring apartment. That night, however, a mouse lures her back into the living room where she sees the small door already opened and discovers a surreal portal that leads into a different but familiar world. Everything appears to be the same at first, like a mirror of the real world, till she meets her other parents and neighbors who have buttons for eyes. Coraline eventually realizes that everything in this magical and finer world is a facade put up by a serial predator known as the Beldam, who is also masquerading as her other mother. The combining of humor and horror in old-school Gothic works like Coraline has been the legacy of the Gothic genre since its inception, according to the scholar Karen Coates. In her co-authored book, The Gothic in Children's Literature, Coates is particularly interested in many fantasy narratives in children's literature that employ the Gothic to respond to an indirect demand among younger audiences. A graphic tale that plays out their worst fears and anxieties to help them cope and attain empowerment. Gaiman's version of the Gothic in relation to female development is expressed in Coraline, where he plays with these fears in children readers, although it ends in a far different place, that is, the other world. Many scholars are especially interested in Freud's concept of the uncanny, psychoanalytically referred to as the Unheimlich or unfamiliar, a German word associated with negative emotions such as fear and terror. While some scholars have examined Coraline Jones's psychic development in the characterization of the uncanny otherworld from a psychoanalytic viewpoint, other scholars have integrated an intertextual approach to understand the text relationship with earlier children's Gothic and the fantasy narratives. While examining the scholarly discussions on both Gaiman and Selick's Coraline, I noticed that there wasn't enough assessment on the role of non-humans and their significance to the uncanny. That being the case, I proposed my very first research question on my primary source. How do non-human roles and encounters serve to challenge the boundaries of humans? This includes the normative values. Moving on to developing my thesis and formulating my own humanistic interpretations, I chose to approach the film by placing greater emphasis on non-human representations, such as this cat right here. For my main argument, in a realm of blurred boundaries comprised of literal manifestations of the Unheimlich, a human, anthropomorphized animals, and hybrid beings become intertwined, threatening the boundaries between human and non-human. This uncanny phenomenon ultimately leads to tragedy in the film's narrative and invariably runs counter to normative values, breeding a sense of unease in the audience. First visual scene from the film I chose to analyze to support my thesis involves an anthropomorphized animal. This black cat right here plays a major role in the film, particularly in Coraline's journey to self-discovery and defeating the beldam's evil, acting as her guide in both the real world and the other world. The cat is humanized in the other world and is unlike other non-human animals in the movie, for he is given a gender, intellect, and a voice. Second is the representation of the other mother, also known as the beldam, and her visual progression, as shown in one of the images here, into an arachnid-like hybrid creature. Her transformation in the film struck me the most. The producer emphasizes her grotesque, monstrous features. She is a witch and a spider at the same time, a manifestation of two of our worst childhood fears. Finally, the seemingly contradictory representation of animals, specifically the insects in the real world and the other world. I will be playing some short clips.
Garden, Coraline.
After examining these two short clips, it is contentious how insects in the real world are treated as pests and filthy but fascinating and tolerable in the other world. We have reached the end of my presentation, but before I end this recording, I would like to leave you with something to think about. Can you think of an animated film with human and animal representation similar to Coraline? If you have come up with one, how would you formulate your own interpretation, while thinking why and how only in the fantastical world, just like the other world, are there unlimited possibilities that cannot, under any circumstances, be translated into the real world? Thank you for listening.